This guy. Well, maybe not this guy, but this guy. We all know him and love him, or in some cases we know him and hate him. Would you say he's a perfect protagonist? I know I wouldn't. Kirito may be our double sword wielding, babe grabbing, virtual monster slaying big boy, but with that high praise comes high flaws. Kirito is very good at not losing. Sure, scenarios happen in which you would say he is losing, but it never really results in a long-term loss. Kirito always gets that dub. That's why I don't want to talk about him this video. Let's push Kirito aside and talk about the person that I think outshines anyone in the entirety of the SAO franchise. Eugeo. Eugeo is kind of a nobody. Growing up in a small village, his only job was to beat the hell out of a tree for the rest of his life until he died, and he was happy doing so. That changed when he met Kirito. When the two ventured out to find a lost girl named Selka, they ran into a heap of goblins within a cave. Eugeo, being a normal guy with no sense of direction in a fight, was absolutely stunned and unable to move or react to the hostile offense of the goblins, leaving Kirito to fend them off. Even when Eugeo does strike up the courage to fight, he's left basically for dead if not for the healing powers of Selka. This all happens within the course of the first 4 episodes of Alicization, and really portrays to the viewers that this guy is a nobody. He's just a kid with a lot of heart in an unfortunate situation. That is such a breath of fresh air. Think back to the beginning of SAO. Kirito always had the advantage. He knew the ins and outs of the game, and was even a beta tester for the game. He was way ahead of the curve, and now we have someone who can't do anything, just a normal bag of flesh and bones. It's much more engaging when you see a character come from nothing and turn it into something, which we will definitely see later on. As time goes on, Eugeo recovers and with the help of Kirito manages to fell the giant tree that was meant to consume the rest of his existence. With his calling ended, he can now decide his next calling. Using his newfound vigor and confidence thanks to his best bud Kirito, he decides on becoming a swordsman. He's going to become the best swordsman he can be in hopes of finding Alice, the little girl that was taken from him all those years ago. Fast forwarding through all the training, up next is what I would see as the single biggest moment in Eugeo's life. Before we get into the next section, it's important to know 4 other characters. Tisei and Ronie are Eugeo and Kirito's disciples respectively. They're very sweet, respectable, and shy girls who are training under our protagonists. Next we have Humbert and Raios, the absolute scum of the earth. These goons abuse their power constantly, even going as far as to sexually harass their lesser-ranked female trainees by taking advantage of laws that can be twisted in nefarious ways. It's also important to know about the seal of the right eye. Everyone, save for Kirito, is constrained by the laws of the world known as the Taboo Index. If you attempt to break a law, you are met with excruciating pain in your right eye to deter you from continuing. Proceeding with your hoodlum law-breaking ways will put you into a paralyzed state with the text System Alert Code 871 appearing in your vision. Now let's jump to the big moment. Tisei and Ronie decide to go and speak with Humbert and Raios after multiple incidents of sexual harassment by them involving their friend come to light. A while later, Eugeo decides he should check if they are okay, resulting in one of the most controversial scenes in SAO. Humbert and Raios are joyfully relaxing and are even happy to see Eugeo as they were expecting him to show up at some point. After some sly heel talk, they lead Eugeo into a horrifying sight of Tisei and Ronie tied up on a bed. Humbert and Raios plan to essentially R-word these girls in front of Eugeo with the intent of nothing happening simply because they are of higher rank and the girls as well as Eugeo must do as they command. Obviously, as the scum lords leap onto the bed and try to start having at it, Eugeo quickly intervenes, but is reminded that he is to not get involved or else he will be breaking the law. Having to sit and watch the friends he loved get abused beyond belief is enough for Eugeo to manage to summon the horrible pain in his right eye. The error blinds his vision too, but Eugeo can't stop there. His sheer heart and will manage to break the seal of the right eye, exploding his entire eye in the process. He then literally chops off Humbert's arm. This kid from a tiny village, who was meant to use a crummy axe to chop down a tree for eternity, managed to not only become an extremely skilled swordsman, but he was the first person to somehow break free from the corrupt laws of the world and deal harsh, visceral justice to those who were abusing the ones he cared for. So let's tally it up so far. A nobody kid from a nowhere town going nowhere in life. So much heart that he would stand up and fight some goblins to save his friends with virtually no prior fighting skills, even if that results in injury or death. Making the unbelievable decision to work his way up from nothing to get proper training as a swordsman in hopes of achieving the highest rank possible, all to find the girl he loved as a kid. Enough bravery and willpower to save his friends, resulting in shattering the formerly unbreakable seal of the right eye, exploding his eye in the process. It's impossible to not like this guy. He hesitates, he falters, he fails, but one thing he doesn't do is ever stop trying. He will fight until he has nothing left if it means saving the ones he loves. While that's very similar to his best friend, the huge discrepancy is that Eugeo isn't overpowered in any aspect. His fights are done with heart alone. He'll never be as strong physically or mentally as Kirito, but he has enough resolve for an entire army. Finally, we get to the saddest, but also the happiest part of Eugeo's entire life, his time at the Central Cathedral. After the incident with Umberto and Rayos, Eugeo and Kirito were sentenced to death for breaking the law. This results in them being brought to the Central Cathedral as prisoners. To save some time of a very long arc, the two manage to escape their cell and then make their way up the cathedral floors, fighting many extremely dangerous and extremely talented Integrity Knights on their way up. As I skip through everything, it should be noted that a lot of subtle but very good character development does happen with Eugeo, making him into even more of that flawed, heart-filled hero that we know. As the pair continues up the cathedral, they eventually find Alice, who is now an Integrity Knight. A fight ensues with all three, and Alice ends up on the outside of the cathedral alongside Kirito, but Eugeo is still trapped inside, with his only way being up. The last Integrity Knight before the top is the most powerful, Borkoli. Eugeo manages to somehow come out on top in the fight by using his sly tactics and the ice power placed within his sword. But when Eugeo finally reaches the top and comes face to face with the Administrator, things end up going very, very bad. The Administrator manages to seduce a battered and broken Eugeo with beauty, but most importantly the promise of everlasting love with no pain or sorrow. This was all obviously a ploy, as the Administrator takes advantage of Eugeo's emotions to turn him into an Integrity Knight with hopes of him killing Kirito and a now reformed Alice, who managed to also break the seal of the right eye. An Integrity Knight's mind is completely wiped of their memories, so Eugeo would see nothing but a simple obstacle in his way when he comes up against Kirito and Alice. His battle leaves both Kirito and Alice trapped in ice. As he returns to the Administrator, she decides that she will redo his night synthesizing as it was done hastily initially. During the resynthesizing process, Eugeo manages to muster all he can to fight back against the thought of his memories being taken from him and stands up and fights the Administrator. Of course, he can't do anything to the ruler of this world, as she is simply at an entirely different level when it comes to power. Skipping ahead, Kirito and Alice manage to reunite with Eugeo and now face the ultimate threat. Administrator has created a completely undefeatable monster made entirely of living blades. This seems to be the end of the road. Kirito and Alice are instantly dispatched by this metallic monster, leaving Eugeo stunned and basically useless. He is thankfully saved by the embodiment of the Cardinal system and is forced to watch, alongside a now healed Kirito and Alice, Cardinal being ruthlessly and slowly terminated as a deal to spare the three's lives. Eugeo sits with Cardinal as the life is about to leave her and asks that she helps him to make the ultimate sacrifice. Eugeo wants Cardinal to use her remaining power to transform him into a living blade to stop this beast and the Administrator once and for all. With protests from Kirito, Cardinal eventually accepts and Eugeo is altered into a massive blade which is capable of eliminating the sword golem forever. After this, he makes the final selfless sacrifice. He goes for Administrator, completely knowing that he will be destroyed. Administrator is actually struck by the blow, but Eugeo is even worse. The sword shatters and he is released from the transformation, cut in half. He became a living weapon, knowing that he would die not only because he wanted to save his friends, but he felt extreme guilt for fighting his own best friend and allowing himself to be turned into an Integrity Knight. After all was said and done, Eugeo sadly passes, but not before granting Kirito his new blood-soaked Crimson Rose sword, giving him the classic dual-wielding style, which is enough to finally rid this world of the dictator known as Administrator. Thankfully, Eugeo does get a happy ending to some extent. He used the memory crystal of young Alice, which he had imbued within himself to become a living sword, to live alongside her as a kid until the end of time and whatever afterlife exists within this world. That concludes a very, very compressed look at the life of Eugeo, in my opinion, a perfect protagonist. Not perfect by means of no flaws, but perfect in that he is like you and me, flawed to the core, but he will do anything for the ones he loves, even if that means sacrificing his own life so that they continue to live. He only ever wanted those around him to be happy, constant hurdles, multiple life-threatening moments, and he never quit. He is the definition of an underdog. A nobody turned into someone who saved the entire world with his own life. What do you think of Eugeo as a character, and what other characters do you consider as S tier within the franchise? Make sure to let me know in the comments below, and I'll be sure to reply. Also, if you do have any good SAO video ideas or questions that can warrant a video, do leave them below. If they're good enough, I might just decide to make a video and credit you. Thanks for watching the video, and hey, if you enjoyed it, a like and subscription help out a ton. Plus, they're free. So long.